Alright guys, we are going to be talking about Lua today. This is something that I've found pretty hard to figure out over the course of my entire modding history here. I finally just recently got a pretty good grasp on it. So, where to begin? I don't know, I guess I just want to make like a little... I don't know, I want to make a video to try to help everybody else who's maybe possibly stuck on this. So the first thing I found that was super helpful is installing this plugin for VS Code that allows you to actually, it's kind of like an IDE, you know, where you get like if you type an extra, you know, you mess up your syntax, it'll actually tell you. Whereas before, I was doing this in Notepad++, and yeah, I just had no idea what the syntax was. I was getting all these errors, and the only way to troubleshoot the error was to boot it up into the game. So we got to install that. So you go to this link, which I'm going to try to put in the YouTube video. Look for this thing. Just give it an install. You have to have Visual Studio Code, obviously, and it'll warn you about writing something to your path, but you don't need to write something to your path. So once that's done, you basically just do new file. Save it as Lua. Probably name it something else for this. And you can, you know, it'll start figuring out that it's actually a Lua file, which was super helpful. The next thing you're probably going to need is the documentation written by Vandy, which I'll pull up on the main screen here. So it's this link, which I'll also try to post. It's got lists to all sorts of, I guess, events and things you can use in the code. So you click faction turn start, it tells you you can call function on it, or you can call faction, query model, or whatever model, and you just keep going through these things, and it kind of helps you figure out what your options are. It's not, you know, I don't learn great from just reading straight documentation. I learn from doing, so that's why I'm trying to make this video for other people that learn from doing, which we'll get into in just a little bit. The next thing is you're going to want to open up, I don't think database has it, I think it's all fast.pack. If you don't have rPFM, you're going to need rPFM. It is the best modding tool in my opinion. And you're going to want to extract this entire script folder. And once you do that, there's this file called allscripted.lua. And it's helpful because if you want to print some log statements, you can write output to log file true. And what will happen is you will get some notepad files that get printed in your ThreeKingdoms directory. But be careful not to confuse that with this write to output log, because I just did that about an hour ago and I was like, why can't I get these to print? But it's this one. And it for some reason seems there's an alternate way of logging things. First of all, you would want to add that into your pack. So this is the pack that I'm working on. I've put that in here. I've turned it off because I'm going to show you another way to print things. This way is good to if you want to get some CA stuff printed in there, which I am going to be working on next or needing next. But so I guess the next important thing would be understanding, this is something I didn't get, is you have to put, you can just put scripts into a mod folder under, like, there's all these various paths here for your script. So I forget where some of these other ones are. I think they're under data top. You know what? This is the great thing about rPFM is you can just do load all CA packs. And it will get you all of them, so you can see how we're kind of missing some stuff here. This isn't the full vanilla script folder. Now we should have everything. And so you can put things under script battle and then make a mod folder, or so this is here because I load all my packs as movie, so that's there, and these things will get loaded. And Vandy showed me what calls that, but just knowing, I was just so hung up on it, but just knowing that if you want your mod to get loaded, you have to put it in a mod folder, and then some existing vanilla system will automatically pull it, so you'll have it. So set your stuff up like that. If you want something to run in the campaign, put it under campaign mod. If you want it to run in battle, put it under battle and then the folder mod. Sweet. I haven't figured this. I don't know if you can set up a workspace in VS Code yet. I assume you can. I haven't done it. But let's go over how to do this for Notepad++, which is how I'm still doing this. So open workspace, open folder is workspace, and then wherever you extracted all those files to, come down here. Actually, this isn't the right path. Whoops. Scripts. Am I blind? I don't think it's scripts AWB. I thought I had a scripts all. Weird. It must just be AWB. It's all of them. Okay, so now you've opened this as a workspace. So let's say I'm working on Emergent Faction, which is something I'm stuck on at the moment, and I want to find all instances of where this occurs in the vanilla script. So you can right click, find in files, find all. It'll do a nice search for all this. And so now you got all these down here, and you can double click and it'll take you to all occurrences of all these things, which is really helpful for figuring out vanilla examples of how these keys are used. And so you know, I guess the watermark might be covering this, but you right click right here, find in files, and let's say you want I don't know, declare war. I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Great. So here's how you could force somebody to declare war. That's a good setup. Super useful. So let's go ahead and make something that actually works with the game. I'm still pretty new to this, so we're just going to take something from a past working thing, which is something you should probably know or probably do as well. So I know this script works. So the first thing, I guess there's some kind of order that matters. So you want your functions to be on top above your listeners. So this is one that has a listener. I don't know why this needed to happen, but put this in here and we'll talk about it in a second. Actually, it's not even important. I guess we'll leave it here, fine. I feel like it might be too much to look at. Maybe we'll add that later. So let's change all occurrences and name this tutorial function 1. And what we're going to need to get that function to fire is this, which goes at the bottom apparently. First tick callback is ran when the game loads, every time it loads, I think. And then there's also one that's first hit callback new, and that's only on new games. So that's what these things do. And so inside this function, it's going to run whatever other function names you have. So we're going to take this, and so now every time that we like load a game, I don't think it's back from battle. It might be back from battle, but we're going to call this function, and this is a listener. So what was super helpful that Vandy told me after me trying to figure this out forever is what all these commas and syntaxes mean in here. So just imagine listener is like some lambda implementation of this. You have key 1, comma, trigger. This is the thing you're listening for. Then you have function 1, comma, function 2, and then a bool. And that's what you're looking at here. So the reason that these ends have commas after them is because they are the commas that are separating these function statements. So I guess I might be getting a little ahead of myself, but we'll say, we'll write an if. It's important. If, I don't know, we'll say we don't really have any access to anything right now. Here, I guess we'll go into the start date stuff. Here, oh, this is easy. This is an easy one. Probably better than getting into that. If context is human equals true, then do something. Right here, we'll have it return the incident. This actually really doesn't make any sense. Okay, hold on. We'll make it do the start here, because for logical sense, figuring out if it's human when an incident occurred is complete garbage. So, if you start an if, you have to sometimes put a then, and then you put an end. So this end does not get a comma because it's attached to this internal if statement. So if context, which comes from incident event occurred, so if you want to know what your options are from that, we go back to the scripting doc, which I closed, but it's open on my other monitor, so I'll just bring it over here. So let's do a control F, find that. The things that you can get from an incident occurred event are the incident, the faction, modify model, query model. I haven't worked with that at all yet. But, so we know that there's a query model. And so you say context.query model, and you can call calendar year, and you can see if it equals 200. For our sake, let's make this do 190 because we'll start in the 190 campaign. Oh, and this is checking that the incident that occurred was the one that we want. But for this sake, for the sake of this tutorial, we're not going to look for any specific one. We'll just return true. Also notice there's no semicolons. I guess you can add them, but from what I've heard from these other guys that do Lua stuff for Warhammer, they don't like the semicolons, so I'm trying not to, because if you ever want them to help you debug their code, I don't know, apparently they hate it. So coming from another programming language like C#, it's kind of rough. So alright, so let's talk about printing stuff. Modlog. So this is going to print, there's two ways to print things. You can say output, which is that thing that we talked about earlier, and that was the one that required you to have the right to log file true. If this is on, it'll print output lines. Apparently those don't. I just ran into this issue. Then that stops printing mod logs, and mod logs just seem easier right now. I have a lot of stuff saved in there. So when this function gets ran, it'll call mod log, and I'll show you where that prints to in a second. And then it has this listener. This has to be a custom name, so tutorial 1. It listens for this incident occurred event. When an incident occurs in the game, this function will be ran. This context is related to this. If context calendar year is 190, then we'll return true. Else we return false. Then this next function gets ran. And I'm pretty sure you have to have context. I don't know if it calls the same. This is where I'm confused. I don't know if it calls this function again. Now that I'm looking at it, I feel like if we wanted to use something from context again, you know what, let's try it out. Let's just see if you get rid of context. I think when this returns true, it calls this function. So, and then the next thing we'll do is saving custom variable. and we'll say tutorial launch true, and we'll get into that maybe in a little bit after we verify that this works. So we got to comment this out, save this, we'll go into the mod, add this file, find it, tutorial, good, it's in here, should work. And we'll play. So in our folder here, it's going to print in this stuff. So let me just kind of get rid of this, save it. It's blank now. This is the location where it prints other things if that other one's turned on, and it's just a whole lot of stuff to look at, and I couldn't find my mod log or any other statements in here. Like, it stopped doing mod log before, so I'm just going to stick to what I like and leave that going on in this one. Alright, so an incident occurred, so hopefully it works on first turn here to see if that prints. So we're going to open up that folder, wasn't the data folder, it's one thing up, and okay, so let's start looking at this here. So the first thing it tells you is that you want to make sure it says loaded successfully. If you get some errors in here, it means that you messed up your syntax. And that shouldn't happen anymore because you've got the IDE thing installed, but I was just running into this all the time. Next, I don't know why it says that it's executing and can't find the name of these things. I don't know, I have no idea. They still work. So this thing is printing that it's finding our listeners, and here's the one that we wrote. So tutorial function listener loading, that was right here, so this is being called, and since 2 events actually fired, we passed all these checks and we saved custom variable. So yeah, it looks like we don't need to pass context back in here. I think if we wanted to use stuff from the context, we would send it in again. So let's talk about setting a saved value. I think this stands for campaign manager, which is some global function that we have. Or global, I don't know, manager. It's like an event manager, and we can save things in there. So now that we've set a variable to be saved, we should do something with it. So close the game. There's actually 2 ways to run through this. We could have another listener. Let's do this. We'll have another listener, and it's waiting on end turn, and maybe I don't want to end it until too many turns. Here's what we'll do. We'll say if context, let me remember how to do this. Like I said, I just started figuring this out, so it's way safer to take this from other things. Here we go. So instead of checking the calendar year, we're going to check if this has happened. What should we write in here? Function to passed. And we need to rename this incident occurred event. Maybe we'll throw in a new one here. We will throw in the, apparently I shouldn't be using these. There's another one, faction turn end, which is just going to see, these count for the AI as well. I'm gonna put this over here because I keep clicking the wrong way. So every time a faction turn ends, this is gonna get called. So technically you want to make sure it's just the players, otherwise this is going to happen all the time. So the way that you can do that is, where did I grab that from? If context faction is human, then, so we're going to have a nested if thing going on here. So we'll tab these in. Try to keep the ends with the ifs. This isn't exactly, there we go. So this one goes with this one goes with that. We're going to return false if we're not human, and this looks like it should work out. To listener now. And now let's say that we wanted something to happen when we pass this. Something's true and we want to call some other kind of function. So let's take the one from my Guandu script. I think the function has to go above the listeners. So try to do that. We'll rename this tutorial 3. Oh. And then what we would do is in here call tutorial 3. So to be clear, let's walk through this real quick. This thing adds a listener. Ooh, we didn't even add the listener for this one, so good thing we caught that. We want to add both listeners when we start the game. Or load. Both of these will be put into memory. They have these listeners that are listening for incidents, and this one's listening for every time the faction turn ends. When it's 190, this will get executed, and we'll be saving a custom variable. Then the next time that we end our turn, since this custom variable is true, we will print this and run this code. And what this code does is basically have Sao Sao confederate Yuan Shao. So let's see if we nailed it. Maybe we'll start new. I don't know if anything got cached weird. Oh, while we're loading, something else I could mention. Remember when I wrote that what these functions do, or what it's like? Having these booleans set to true means that they'll persist. So if it gets called and it only gets called once, then you want it to set false. There's ways to remove these so that once they execute, we can remove them, which I probably could have gone over. So it's remove listener. So once we've done this, you would remove this listener, which is this name, and then it wouldn't keep happening. Well, we'll go Kong wrong this time, why not? So that event occurred. Open this up. Say, oh, it does the one. Why is it doing it twice? That's interesting. There's only one event occurred. Unless I have this. No. I'm not sure why that's being printed twice. That's interesting. Maybe because this one occurred too, so it knows about it ahead of time, I guess. Alright, so we will, let's just, well, whatever, we'll end turn. So faction turn end. So, because we ended our turn and that other variable is true, we passed, and then we ran this, which says confederate yuan shao. So if we look, oh, and then it fired this event. Sorry, so fire the event of Guandu. Cao Cao has confederated yuan shao, as you can see. So that is kind of how you work through these things. Two keys that I seem to be using the most are incident occurred event and faction turn end. And this is really, I guess, a good video for the basics. I don't want to make this too long, but you guys can at least, you know, look at this code, see how we're doing some other things here. I guess it's good to do null checks. Should probably show that somewhere. Thought I had a null check somewhere. Here. So you're going to want to check that the character isn't dead or gone or something, so it's good to have null checks in there somewhere. And I think that's probably a pretty good starting point. I would include this code for you, but you're not going to have this incident. I guess I can include this code. I'll upload it somewhere and try to save it to the video. But just so you know, this incident is coming from my, my mod packs. So because these aren't set to generate, they're generating from Lua. They won't generate by the game, and so you won't be able to fire this specific incident. Just know that that'll give you some problems if you want to use this code as a base template. Yeah, I hope this helps, and I'm going to try to keep making videos as I find some more complicated answers to all these things that you can dive into here with Lua. So happy mod.